Arch Commander Vorzith stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his flagship, watching with cold satisfaction as the defense grid of Lumina Prime collapsed. The blue-green world below had been the last major holdout in this sector of the spiral arm. Its fall would mark the culmination of a 17-year campaign. "The Luminans have transmitted their surrender, Arch Commander," reported Subdirector Krell, her segmented carapace gleaming under the harsh lights of the command deck. "The Coalition Fleet Admiral has requested terms." "No terms," Vorzith replied, his four eyes narrowing. "The hegemony does not negotiate with species that resist assimilation. Prepare the occupation force." The Vol hegemony had conquered 37 star systems in their march across the galaxy. Their strategy never varied. Overwhelm local defenses with superior numbers, establish orbital dominance, and then deploy ground forces to crush any remaining resistance. It was efficient, predictable, and, until now, unfailingly successful. "Incoming transmission from Science Director Kalax," announced the communications officer. The holographic form of Kalax materialized before Vorzith. Unlike most Vol, whose exoskeletons displayed various hues of blue, Kalax's shell had been deliberately altered to a stark white, marking his status among the scientific elite. "Arch Commander, our intelligence division has intercepted communications from an uncharted system approximately 3 light-years from our current position," Kalax reported. "The signatures suggest a pre-FTL civilization, but with unusually advanced electromagnetic technologies." Vorzith dismissed the information with a flick of his secondary appendage. "Another primitive world for future processing. Let the cataloging division handle it." "There's more, Arch Commander," Kalax continued. "The data suggests this species, they call themselves humans, has been monitoring our assault on Lumina Prime. They've been intercepting our communications." Vorzith's feeding mandibles clicked in irritation. "Impossible. Our encryption is apparently not as impenetrable as we believed," Kalax interrupted, a breach of protocol that indicated the severity of his concern. "Moreover, we've detected unusual energy signatures from their system. They appear to be mobilizing." "A pre-FTL species mobilizing against the hegemony?" Vorzith laughed, a harsh chittering sound. "What threat could they possibly pose?" Fleet tactician Drovok, who had been silently analyzing data at her station, spoke up. "Arch Commander, if I may, we've encountered 17 pre-FTL civilizations during our expansion. All followed predictable patterns of development. This Earth does not." Vorzith turned his attention to the tactical display, where a small, unremarkable yellow star was now highlighted. "Elaborate. Their technological development is uneven. Advanced in some areas, primitive in others. Their weaponry focuses on kinetic and chemical systems rather than energy-based technologies. Most concerning is their military doctrine. It's unlike anything in our records. They seem to prioritize adaptation over standardization." "Irrelevant," Vorzith declared. "We will proceed with the occupation of Lumina Prime. Once that is complete, we will dispatch a survey force to this Earth to evaluate its resources and resistance potential." As the meeting dispersed, Navigation Officer Torbal approached Vorzith privately. "Arch Commander, there's something else. Something the Science Director didn't mention." "Speak." "The humans, they've been broadcasting messages to Lumina, offering assistance." Vorzith's exoskeleton stiffened. "A pre-FTL species offering assistance against us? The arrogance is amusing." "Yes, Arch Commander." But the Luminans responded. They accepted. For the first time in his 300-cycle existence, Arch Commander Vorzith felt something approximating unease. "Monitor all communications from this Earth, and accelerate the occupation timeline. I want Lumina Prime under complete control within 3 planetary rotations." As Vorzith turned to leave the bridge, a small alert appeared on the tactical display, a minor anomaly, easily overlooked amidst the complexity of conquering a world. Multiple objects, moving at unprecedented velocity, had just entered the Luminan system. Captain Lorelei Tannhauser felt the distinctive shudder of the drop pod as it hit Lumina's upper atmosphere. Inside the cramped titanium shell, she and her squad of 11 Odin operators sat in tense silence, each mentally preparing for what was to come. 30 seconds to deployment, came the AI's voice through their neural interfaces. Atmospheric conditions nominal. Target zone shows heavy enemy presence. Tannhauser looked at the faces of her team. Humanity's most elite Special Forces unit, the Orbital Deployment Infiltration Network. They had trained for this moment since the first alien transmissions were decoded 3 years ago, when humanity realized they weren't alone in the galaxy, and that their neighbors were being systematically conquered. The world's governments had made an unprecedented decision. Unite or die. Remember your training, she said over the squad channel. The Vol have never encountered human tactics. They rely on overwhelming force and rigid formations. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we disappear. Beside her, Lieutenant Kaito Blackwood checked his exoskeleton systems one final time. The powered armor was Earth's answer to the Vol's natural exoskeleton, a composite of carbon nanotubes, reactive polymers, and neural interfaces that amplified human strength 20-fold. I still can't believe we're the first humans to set foot on an alien world, he muttered. And we're doing it by dropping from orbit into the middle of an invasion. On Tannhauser's other side, Warrant Officer Dmitry Volkov grinned, the expression barely visible behind his visor. Would you prefer a nice diplomatic reception? Champagne and canapes? Honestly, yes. The pod shuddered more violently as it descended through the thicker layers of atmosphere. Outside, the metal shell was glowing white-hot from the friction, rendering them effectively invisible to Vol sensors, which were calibrated to detect conventional spacecraft. 10 seconds, the AI announced. Sergeant Azura Khalil, the team's combat engineer, completed her pre-drop checklist. Disruptors charged. Countermeasures ready. Those bugs won't know what hit them. The pod split apart precisely as designed, sections peeling away to reveal 12 armored figures hurtling toward the surface of Lumina Prime. Their suits automatically adjusted to compensate for the planet's gravity, slightly higher than Earth's, as retrothrusters engaged to slow their descent. Tannhauser's display lit up with tactical information. The Vol had established a perimeter around the Luminan capital city, their forces deploying in the methodical, grid-like pattern that characterized all their military operations. Their ships hung in low orbit, massive and intimidating. Blackwood, Khalil, you're on the command node. Volkov, Rhodes, take out their communications array. The rest of you, with me, we're heading for the defense hub. Acknowledgement lights winked green across her HUD as the team split into 3 groups during freefall, vectoring toward their designated targets. The first indication the Vol had that something was wrong came when Blackwood's shape charge detonated against their forward command post's shield generator. The second was when Tannhauser and her team landed in their midst, kinetic dampeners absorbing the impact as their suits transitioned seamlessly from descent to combat mode. Contact, Tannhauser reported calmly, her railgun spitting hypersonic projectiles that punched through Vol armor with devastating efficiency. Engaging. The Vol response was immediate but confused. Their battle doctrine had no protocol for small unit infiltrators appearing suddenly within their defensive perimeter. Their weapons, designed for large-scale engagements, struggled to track the rapidly moving human operators. Tannhauser vaulted over a Vol barricade, her exosskeleton's enhanced muscles launching her 15 meters through the air. She landed behind 3 Vol soldiers and dispatched them with precision shots before they could turn. Command node neutralized, Blackwood reported. Luminan resistance fighters are converging on our position. Communications array disabled, came Volkov's voice. But we've got company. Looks like they're deploying some kind of specialized hunter units. Tannhauser processed this as she moved toward the defense hub. All teams, maintain mission focus. Our job is to disrupt their command structure long enough for the main assault to arrive. As if on cue, her HUD updated with a new notification. 200 more drop pods had just entered Lumina's atmosphere. The first wave of Operation Downfall had begun. 3 days into the ground war, Arch Commander Vorzith could no longer deny the unprecedented nature of the situation. The occupation of Lumina Prime, which should have been a simple matter of establishing control grids and processing centers, had devolved into chaos. "How is this possible?" he demanded, mandibles clicking furiously as he reviewed the latest casualty reports. "These humans number less than 1,000. We have deployed 200,000 troops." Science Director Kalax studied the holographic display showing the scattered engagement zones across Lumina's capital province. "Their tactics defy conventional military doctrine, Arch Commander. They do not attempt to hold territory or establish defensive positions. They strike, inflict maximum damage, and withdraw. Guerrilla warfare," said Fleet Tactician Drovak, using the human term. "And they've armed the Luminans with their weapons technology." This was perhaps the most troubling development. The humans had brought crates of their primitive but surprisingly effective projectile weapons, firearms, they called them, and distributed them to Luminan resistance fighters. The weapons required no power sources or specialized training, making them ideal for a hastily assembled insurgency. "Their primary strategic objective appears to be disruption rather than direct confrontation," Kalax continued. "They've targeted our command nodes, supply depots, and communication relays. Conventional wisdom would suggest." "I am not interested in conventional wisdom," Vorzith interrupted. "I want solutions." The command center fell silent. In 17 years of expansion, the hegemony had never encountered resistance of this nature. Their entire military doctrine was built around overwhelming force against organized opposition. This chaos was something else entirely. "We must adapt," Drovak finally said. "Decentralize our command structure. Deploy smaller, more mobile units instead of standard formations." Vorzith's feeding mandibles twitched with displeasure. "You suggest we imitate these primitives? Abandon thousands of cycles of proven military doctrine?" "I suggest we survive, Arch Commander." Captain Tannhauser crouched in the ruins of what had once been a Luminan educational facility, now serving as a forward operating base. Around her, Odin operators and Luminan fighters prepared for the night's operations. "The Vol are adapting," Lieutenant Blackwood reported, displaying tactical data on his wrist projector. "They've broken up their main force into smaller units. More mobile, less predictable." Tannhauser nodded. "Expected. They are intelligent beings, not mindless drones." "What about orbital support?" "Still neutralized. Those EM pulse satellites we deployed in the first drop are keeping their ships blind. They can't risk orbital bombardment without visual confirmation of targets." Warrant Officer Volkov joined them, accompanied by Kalax, a Luminan resistance leader. The alien's crystalline skin reflected the low light in fascinating patterns, a stark reminder of how different their new allies were. "My people are ready for the next phase," Kalax said, his translator converting his harmonic speech into English. "But many question whether we can truly defeat the hegemony. They have conquered 37 worlds before ours." 37 worlds that weren't expecting them," Tannhauser replied. 37 worlds that fought alone." She activated her own display, showing the positions of human forces across the continent. "We're not trying to defeat their entire military in direct combat. We're making the occupation so costly they'll be forced to reconsider." Sergeant Khalil approached with fresh intelligence. "We've identified their new command structure. They've distributed authority to regional commanders, 12 across the capital province." "Then we have 12 targets," Tannhauser said. "Coordinate with all resistance cells. Simultaneous strikes in 3 hours." As the meeting dispersed, Blackwood remained behind. The Vol launched another communication burst toward their home territories. "They're calling for reinforcements." Tannhauser checked the timer on her display, a countdown to the arrival of Earth's main fleet, still accelerating toward the Luminan system. "Then we'd better make sure they regret setting foot on this planet before those reinforcements arrive." Across Lumina Prime, human operators and Luminan fighters prepared for another night of calculated violence against an enemy that had never known defeat until now. By the 15th day of what the humans had designated Operation Downfall, the Vol occupation force was approaching collapse. What had begun as tactical adjustments had devolved into desperate survival measures. Subdirector Krell, now the highest-ranking officer still alive in the southern continent after Arch-Commander Vorzatha's command center had been struck by human saboteurs, gathered her remaining command staff. "We have lost contact with 60% of our ground forces," she reported grimly. "The orbital fleet remains functional but effectively blind. Our supply chains are compromised. Most concerning, we have detected a new wave of human vessels approaching the system. These cannot be mere transport ships," objected military coordinator Zox. "Our intelligence indicated the humans possessed no faster-than-light capability." "Our intelligence," Krell replied acidly, "also indicated they possessed no significant military threat. Yet here we stand, on the verge of the first major defeat in hegemony history." The tactical display showed the scattered remnants of once proud Vol formations, now reduced to isolated pockets, fighting for survival across Lumina's surface. The methodical conquest had transformed into a chaotic melee where the humans' adaptability and the Luminans' knowledge of the terrain created an insurmountable advantage. "The humans call their doctrine asymmetric warfare," said intelligence analyst Vex, who had been studying intercepted communications. "They recognized they could not match our numbers or technology, so they targeted our weaknesses instead." "And what weaknesses are those?" demanded Zox. "Rigidity, predictability, over-reliance on centralized command structures." Vex's mandibles clicked nervously. "They exploit the very aspects of our military that we considered strengths." Krell made the difficult decision. Send the emergency signal to the homeworld. Request immediate extraction of all remaining forces. Retreat. Zox's carapace flushed dark blue with shock. "In 17 cycles of expansion." "We have never faced an enemy like this," Krell interrupted. "The hegemony must know what we are dealing with. We must regroup, analyze, adapt." As the command staff dispersed to implement the retreat order, Krell studied the tactical display once more. The humans had accomplished what no other species had managed. They had broken the Vol hegemony stride. Fleet Admiral Marisol Thorne stood on the bridge of the ESS Indomitable, flagship of humanity's first interstellar battle group, watching as the distant star of Lumina grew larger on the main view screen. "Status report," she ordered. "Odin ground forces report the Vol are in disarray," replied her executive officer, Commander Econ Okafor. "They appear to be abandoning forward positions and falling back to extraction points. Intelligence suggests they've called for evacuation." Thorne allowed herself a small smile. When Earth had first detected the Vol incursion into neighboring systems, many had advocated for isolation, hiding their technological signature, hoping to avoid detection. Instead, they had chosen a bolder path: rapid militarization and proactive defense of their stellar neighborhood. "The Luminan government extends their formal thanks," Okafor continued. "Their casualties were significant, but far below projections thanks to our intervention." "And our losses?" Thorne asked quietly. 28 Odin operators confirmed killed in action. 43 wounded, but stable. Thorne closed her eyes briefly. Each loss was personal. Earth had sent its best, its most elite warriors, knowing many wouldn't return. The gamble had paid off strategically, but the cost remained high. "The Vol fleet is beginning to move," reported Tactical Officer Ridley. "Looks like they're preparing for mass acceleration out of the system." "Are we in range to intercept?" Thorne asked. "Negative, Admiral. They'll be gone before we arrive." Thorne considered this. Maybe that's for the best. Let them run home with tales of defeat. Let them spread the word. Humanity is not to be trifled with. The bridge crew nodded in agreement. This victory wasn't just about saving Lumina. It was about establishing humanity's place in a dangerous galaxy. The message had been sent. Mess with Earth's neighbors, and you deal with Earth. As the Vol ships began disappearing into FTL, fleeing a battle they had entered with absolute confidence just weeks before, Thorne opened a channel to all Earth vessels. "All ships, this is Admiral Thorne. The enemy is retreating. Operation Downfall is a success. Well done, everyone. Well done." The Grand Council chamber of the Vol Hegemony fell silent as Archcommander Vorzith, recalled from the disaster at Lumina Prime, finished his report. The 17 Supreme Directors, who comprised the ruling body, sat motionless, their compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays showing the extent of their defeat. In summary, Vorzith concluded, the human intervention was decisive. Their tactics were unlike anything documented in our 17 cycles of expansion. They targeted command structures rather than engaging in direct confrontation. They armed and organized indigenous resistance. They rendered our numerical advantage irrelevant through mobility and precision strikes. Supreme Director Osvig, eldest of the Council, leaned forward. And now you tell us these humans have established defensive pacts with neighboring systems? That they are sharing their military doctrine? Correct, Eminence. 7 previously independent systems have entered into mutual defense agreements with Earth. They call it the Orion Cooperative. Preposterous, hissed Director Malther. A pre-FTL species coordinating interstellar defense? How did they even reach Lumina Prime? Science Director Kalax, who had been permitted to attend the extraordinary session, activated a new holographic display. They developed what they call relativistic acceleration vessels. Not true faster-than-light travel, but ships capable of reaching significant fractions of light speed. Inefficient by our standards, but effective. Moreover, our intelligence now indicates they have been observing our expansion for years, preparing countermeasures. They anticipated us, Vorzith added. While we dismissed them as primitives, they studied our tactics, identified our weaknesses, and developed specific counters. The council chamber erupted in angry chittering as the implications became clear. The hegemony's expansion, previously unopposed except for token resistance, had encountered an inflection point. A species that by all metrics should have been easy to subjugate had instead handed them their first major defeat. What do you propose, Archcommander? Asked Supreme Director Osvig. Vorzith had anticipated this question. His answer would determine not only his own fate, but potentially the future direction of the hegemony. We must adapt, he said firmly. The humans have demonstrated that our current doctrine is vulnerable to asymmetric countermeasures. We should withdraw from the contested region, reassess our strategies, and develop new approaches before engaging the Orion Cooperative again. Retreat. Malther's carapace flushed dark blue with outrage. You suggest the mighty hegemony should cower before these primitives? I suggest the mighty hegemony should survive, Director. The humans demonstrated at Lumina Prime that they are willing to commit fully to warfare, despite their technological limitations. Our preliminary analysis suggests they have diverted over 40% of their planetary resources to military development since detecting our presence. A species with such dedication to warfare must be contained, said Director Ezek, speaking for the first time. Perhaps even eradicated before they develop true interstellar capabilities. Science Director Kalax's feeding mandibles clicked nervously. With respect, Director, our models suggest such an approach would be catastrophic. The humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability and determination. A direct assault on their homeworld would likely result in a protracted conflict with unpredictable outcomes. 6 months after the Battle of Lumina Prime, Captain Lorelei Tannhauser stood at attention in the newly constructed Hall of Nations in Geneva as Fleet Admiral Thorne pinned the Star of Terra to her uniform. For exceptional leadership and courage in humanity's first extraterrestrial conflict, Thorne announced, her voice carrying through the vast chamber where representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered. Captain Tannhauser and the operators of Odin's Strike Team Alpha demonstrated that humanity's greatest strength lies not in our technology, but in our ingenuity, adaptability, and indomitable spirit. Tannhauser saluted sharply, aware of the weight of the moment. Behind her stood the surviving members of her team, Blackwood, Volkov, Khalil, and the others, each receiving similar commendations. Later, at the reception, she found herself standing beside Ambassador Kalax, the Luminan resistance leader now serving as his people's representative to Earth. My people still speak of the day your warriors fell from our sky, Kalax said, his crystalline skin catching the light. The day the invincible hegemony learned fear. Tannhauser sipped her champagne. They're not defeated, you know. They've pulled back, regrouped. Our intelligence suggests they're reforming their military doctrine. They'll be back, and they'll be smarter next time. But so will we, said a new voice. Admiral Thorne joined them, along with representatives from the other systems that had joined the Orion Cooperative. The defensive pact now includes 11 systems. Our shipyards are producing new vessels daily. Earth scientists are working with the best minds from across the cooperative to advance our technology. And most importantly, added General Reichmann, Earth's highest-ranking military officer, we're training more Odin operators, taking what we learned at Lumina Prime and developing it further. Tannhauser nodded, but her eyes drifted to the memorial wall where the names of the fallen were inscribed in luminescent script. 28 Odin operators had given their lives to secure humanity's first interstellar victory. Friends, comrades, the best Earth had to offer. To the fallen, she said, raising her glass. To the fallen, the others echoed. Outside the hall, beyond the windows that looked out over a rebuilt Geneva, the stars shone in the night sky. Somewhere out there, the Vol hegemony was considering its next move. But they would do so with a new understanding, that conquest was no longer assured, that expansion would be contested, that the galaxy had changed. Because Earth's most lethal warriors had fallen from the sky, and in doing so, they had risen to defend not just humanity, but all who would stand with them against tyranny. Victory, once assured for the hegemony, now belonged to an alliance of the determined. And at its heart stood humanity, adaptable, resourceful, and unbreakable. The message had been sent to all corners of the galaxy. Threaten Earth or its allies, and Earth's warriors would fall from the sky once more. And next time, they would be ready,